Hello, and welcome to the Orthodontic Products Podcast. I'm your host, Allison Warner. Thanks for joining me today. Today's episode is sponsored by A-dec, and we're diving into a topic that's all about you, your health, your comfort, and how the design of your clinical space can make or break both. We're talking stools, patient chairs, delivery units, and workstations, and how ergonomic design plays a major role in preventing the aches, pains, and long-term injuries that are far too common in the orthodontic practice. Here to walk us through it is Jeromy Moss, Territory Manager with A-dec. Jeromy has been with the company for nearly 2 decades, helping orthodontists set up new offices and remodel existing ones. He's also a certified ergonomics assessment specialist, which means he not only knows the equipment inside and out, but he understands how your habits and setup impact your productivity, your health, and your career longevity. Jeromy, great to have you on the podcast.
Great to be here. Thanks for the introduction. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So let's get started with your certification. You're an ergonomics assessment specialist. What does that training involve, and how does that inform the way you support orthodontists as a territory manager for A-dec?
Sure. No, great question. So all A-dec territory managers are CEAS certified, which certified ergonomics assessment specialists. For me personally, and I think everybody else as well at the company, this is something very valuable, very important, because it's not just a certification that we spent 3 days with a physical therapist specifically learning on how to assess a doctor and his or her team on how they access the oral cavity, how they position themselves in their stools, how they position themselves as a team around that patient. So it's very important, very valuable. So we really utilize it to assess the team. So it kind of depends. If they have a practice and they're getting ready to maybe build a new building, for instance, we come in, we'll assess them in their current space,
Okay.
and then talk about maybe the new space on what that's going to look like and how we can maybe accommodate some of the things and some of the issues they're having with accessing the oral cavity. But the CEAS is very important because if a doctor utilizes that certification that we have, ultimately it's going to help them with feeling better 5 years, 10 years, 20 years at the end of the career. And I say this all the time. It's not just the doctor, it's the team as well. I mean, doctors are, the team's very important to the doctor.
Yeah.
And they want to have a healthy staff, a healthy team.
Mm-hmm.
So how you get that access to the oral cavity is very, 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 very important.
Yeah.
To
Yeah. So since you're working with a lot of orthodontists and their staff, and you come across them at different stages in their careers, what are some of the most common pain points, literally, that you hear about? Is it neck strain, shoulder pain? What are the day-to-day movements or habits that are usually to blame?
Sure. Statistics show, to go along with this question,
Mm-hmm.
that doctors are 65 to 70% in some form of pain, working in some form of pain, or
Okay.
with pain, I should say.
Yeah.
Hygienists, which orthodontists actually sometimes have a hygienist that will come in and do some cleanings.
Yeah.
70% of hygienists work with some form of pain.
Mm.
And then a staggering statistic, and I have several dental schools in my territory,
Yeah.
third-year dental students, before they're even out in the real world, so to speak,
Uh-huh.
already are in 70% of them are in some form of pain.
Ah,
So
okay.
it's staggering. So what I say to that all the time, and I'm going to get to your question, I promise,
Mm-hmm.
is it's very, very important as a young practitioner to start off with good habits,
Yeah.
right? So as they grow in their career, they feel better at the end
Yeah.
of the day.
Absolutely.
But I would 100% say when so the CES certifications, even maybe go back to the question you had,
Yeah.
what I do a lot of is I'll get asked to come in. Dr. Allison, let's just use
Mm-hmm.
kind of your name.
Mm-hmm.
You want me to come in? You want me to watch you and your team work? Because maybe that you're having some serious issues and some of the team members are having some issues with their pain. And so I'll watch from the hallway and literally just watch you work chairside with you and
Mm-hmm.
your team. And then maybe after 2 hours or so, kind of observing, we'll get together at the end of the day, or maybe it's before lunch that I'm watching you. And at
Mm-hmm.
lunch, we'll get together and talk through that and really watch at what I'm looking for is class movements. Okay. And what I
Okay.
mean by that is, and if I don't mind, I'll explain this real
Yeah,
quick.
go for it.
1s are fingers, 2s are wrists, 3s are elbows, 4s are like shoulder shrugs if we're like trying to go
Okay.
and get to the oral cavity.
Yeah.
And then 5s are big trunk rotations, like if we're constantly twisting our bodies to go
Okay.
grab something and then
Okay.
come back to the whether it's the work surface or whether it's the patient.
Mm-hmm.
So the more that we can stick with 1, 2s, and 3s, and the less of like the 4s and 5s, the big trunk
Oh,
rotations, the
okay.
better. So with that CES certification,
Mm-hmm.
I come and look for that. Like, hey,
Okay.
Dr. Allison and team
Mm-hmm.
members, we're doing a lot of like bending over to go grab things. Like,
Yeah.
we need to figure out how to, bring those up closer so they're minimal reaches. Does that
Mm-hmm.
make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
So to go with the question you just asked, if we're doing a lot of shoulder shrugs to get to the oral cavity, we're really trying to get tall
Right.
to get to oral cavity, we're going to feel that in our upper neck muscles,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
If I'm leaning out over the patient, constantly trying to get vision to the oral cavity,
Mm-hmm.
my upper neck muscles, because my head is got
Yeah.
to have a forward head carriage,
Right.
my head starts multiplying, doubling as far as weight when I start protruding it out
Mm-hmm.
over my shoulders. So see a lot of neck pain, a lot of shoulder, because we're doing that, forward head carriage, looking
Mm.
to get access and vision to the oral cavity.
Okay.
So what we try to teach, and we don't just try to teach it, we build product to it. And I know we're going to talk about that here in a
Yeah.
little bit
Yeah.
on how do we get better access so that we can adjust our patient to me as a practitioner
Mm-hmm.
or to yourself and your team members.
Right.
If we have a product, whether it's the patient chair or the stool or even the console or it's called an ortho pedestal,
Yeah.
how do we make sure that we can adjust the patient to us and not us to the patient, but bring the patient's oral cavity to us, right? That's crucial.
Mm-hmm.
But it really starts with the dental seating for the practitioner. They have to sit properly in their stool,
Right.
chair side, and then introduce the patient to themselves. So it really
Okay.
starts, we talk a lot about, it starts with me as a practitioner sitting myself properly
Mm-hmm.
and then bringing that oral cavity to me versus me to
Okay.
that oral cavity.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
as
go ahead.
far as pain, I'm sorry. As far as pain, I see a lot of, when they compensate, it's a lot at the hips and then it's a lot at the head, right?
Ah, okay.
So we really got to work on like, hey, we need to sit, get ourselves properly positioned and sit better.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay, so going on from that, talk to me about how the right equipment, the right stool, the right patient chair can help with that.
sure. Again, starting at the stool, because that's where it starts,
Okay.
we have a stool that accommodates anybody's body type.
Okay.
Okay. And so what I mean by that, we're all built differently as
Mm-hmm.
humans, right? We all have different sit bones and different thighs and, different, torsos and things like that.
Right.
So if you have a stool that's kind of not a one size fits all, and
Mm-hmm.
you and I try to sit in that same stool, maybe it doesn't adapt to myself like it does to you. Does that make sense?
Right. Yes.
So our stool, no matter who sits in it, it's got a flex frame that actually gives and kind of contours to everybody's different body types and body shapes.
Okay.
So it's going to allow each practitioner to sit in that stool properly. And there's some education that comes with that and how
Yeah.
to use it properly.
Mm-hmm.
And then it allows backrest adjustments and movements with a push of a tab. So we
Oh.
have a stool, and there's a lot of stools on the market, and
Mm-hmm.
I just educate towards our stool.
Yeah.
But we have a stool too that is a very older product for us that had a knob. Okay.
Okay.
So a knob, you adjust it when you first get it, and then you probably don't adjust it for the
True.
next 20 years.
Yeah.
Like it's too cumbersome, right?
Mm-hmm.
The stool we have now, big improvements on our previous stool. It's a push tab. So literally you can
Okay.
push a tab and you can make these adjustments in seconds. So why is that important? Well, let's say you have an office that has a 6-foot doctor,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And then I'm the assistant that's 5'2". There's big variances, big
Right.
variables on
Yeah.
how you're going to position yourself.
Yeah.
And if a doctor that's 6 foot can come in and make those quick adjustments in seconds,
Mm-hmm.
then shame on them for not using it, if you will.
Right.
But a knob, they're not going to adjust it and they're going to
True.
just accommodate.
True.
So the stool is where it starts.
Okay.
And then
Okay.
that the patient chair, you have to sit a patient properly. And so, Allison, I spend a lot of time on this. When I sell when the doctor makes the purchase on the
Mm-hmm.
product, we come in and we do an equipment orientation, right? So when they partner with us, we come in and spend a lot of time, couple hours, 2 hours with the staff and the team members on, you have the best product on the market. We got to make sure we're utilizing it to its fullest potential.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so when picking a chair, a patient chair, we believe, and I believe, that it's
Mm-hmm.
very important that there's those adjustments to be able to sit different size patients in the patient chair.
Ah,
Okay.
okay. Okay.
Because what we see a lot of is if the headrest stays touching the backrest
Mm-hmm.
and we're not adjusting the headrest up to accommodate a taller patient, that patient is going to slouch down in the chair wherever that headrest is. Okay. And bear
Okay.
with me. I think this is going
Yeah.
to make sense here in a second. And if we make everybody like a 5'2" patient because they slouch down in the chair,
Mm-hmm.
um, the shorter the patient, the harder it is to get access to oral cavity because you do have to roll up underneath the backrest, no matter whose product there is.
Okay.
If we extend the headrest up and we extend the patient to their true size, we
Mm-hmm.
actually can get better access to oral cavity. So
Ah, okay.
it even starts with just sitting the patient properly.
Okay.
Okay. The second thing is I firmly believe there's a lot of product out there in the orthodontic space
Mm-hmm.
that only the backrest has adjustments. Okay. So you can lay a patient back and then you bring the patient forward.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I firmly believe that having a base adjustment as well is going to be beneficial and helpful to the overall success of that practitioner and
Right.
his or her team.
Yeah.
Because again, if I'm 6 foot, I'm going to need that base to be able to raise higher so I can
So you're
roll up
not
underneath
leaning
it,
over.
and
Right.
not leaning over.
Okay.
Maybe you're shorter at 5'2" or 5 foot. Well, I want
Mm-hmm.
that chair to go even lower
Mm-hmm.
so that I can, sit in my stool and I don't have to raise my stool super tall to
Right.
get up to that taller base, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So having those movements and adjustments, again, to be able to adjust the patient to my height as a practitioner
Mm-hmm.
or team member is very, very crucial.
Yeah.
Very crucial.
What would you say to an orthodontist or a team member who's like, oh, I can't do all those adjustments for every patient, for every chair?
Good question. Great. Sorry, were you done? I
Yeah,
didn't mean
no, that's it. That was the question.
I was so excited. I wanted to jump in and answer that question. Great question, because here's what I say. And if I don't mind, I'm going to back up just a
Yeah.
tad. And it's not, so I graduated school with exercise science, sports medicine degree.
Okay.
Okay. I was actually thinking about going to be a physical therapist and did my internship in South Bend, Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
But realized that's not what I wanted to do the rest of my career. And it's a great profession.
Yeah.
So a lot of the things that I learned in school is a lot of what we talk about
Right.
chair
Okay.
side. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So to answer your question, I say this all the time. Allison, let's pretend you're the team member. You work
Mm-hmm.
at the practice. Okay. You're here for 8 hours a day, 4 days a week, or whatever that particular office schedule is. Right.
Yeah.
I'm here as a patient, depending on what they're doing, maybe 20 to, 30 to 45 minutes, depending again on what they're doing.
Right.
So if you're here 8 hours a day, adjust that patient to you, right? And have them do certain things. Even sometimes, Allison, it's like, hey, Jeromy, move your chin to the right or move your chin to the left while they're in the patient chair,
Mm-hmm.
because that's going to help me be able to see a little bit better when you're
Okay.
working on my oral cavity.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, 100%. Like, Allison, I hear what you're saying, and you're like, hey, it takes me a couple seconds to adjust the patient.
Right.
But what I always say is this. Whether it's me in my truck and vehicle driving for 8 hours around my territory,
Mm-hmm.
I feel it towards the end of the day. I start feeling a little
Right.
tired,
Mm-hmm.
right? We all do in our
Mm-hmm.
job.
Mm-hmm.
So adjusting that oral cavity to you and taking the extra couple, call it 5-10 seconds to make that adjustment.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, you're going to feel less fatigued because you're not going to hold some of these postures that if you're trying to lean out over the oral cavity, you're going to start feeling that. Right?
Yeah.
So if you take an extra 10, even 20 seconds and bring the patient to you, I promise you will feel better at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the day than than if you don't do that. And
Yeah.
then I always jokingly say, hey, we all go to lunch and eat our turkey sandwich and we start kind of feeling sluggish, right?
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
and so make those adjustments because it will 100% help you feel better towards the end of the day and again towards the end of a career.
Yeah.
So
Well, and
take
if
that
you're
time.
talking, and if you're saying that like third year residents are already
Yeah.
feeling it, then what does that mean for a 20, 30-year career? You know.
Yes. And I think too in the orthodontic world,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's even more challenging. And I'm not by no means a practitioner, so
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
not done this job,
yeah.
but I've observed a lot of it for 20
Mm-hmm.
years. This is what I've been doing. But I think because there's so much, especially when they're doing all the bands and taking off brackets. I mean, there's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of not that the other professions and the other specialties aren't challenging as well, because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, everybody's still trying to get access to oral cavity,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
But I feel like even in the orthodontic world, I would say even it seems like it's more challenging as well.
Mm.
So
Okay. Okay. So talk to me, given that you just said like, orthodontics is a little bit different. Orthodontist isn't general dentistry. Is there a meaningful difference between the equipment designed for a dental practice and that designed for an ortho workflow?
sure. So I would say that stools same across
Okay.
any specialty. To me, again, I think the chair is very comparable as far as patient chair, right?
Hmm.
To be able to get access to the maxillary and the mandible and be able to
Okay.
adjust the patient's head. I think the biggest difference, though, and you bring up a good point, is the ortho pedestal, which is kind of like the side console,
Okay.
right? That sits kind of to the right or to the left of the chair, depending
Hmm.
on left-handed, right-handed
Hmm.
kind of mentality. But I think that that's the biggest difference.
Okay.
And why that is they want a lot of drawer storage.
Hmm.
And then they want a pretty good size work surface that is right there, right to the right of the patient. If they're
Hmm.
kind of a right-handed mentality,
Yeah.
obviously it'd be on the left side for left-handed mentality.
Hmm.
But they have a lot of material and products that they're kind of spreading out on this ortho pedestal. That's a little bit different from a standpoint of general dentists. It's more behind the patient. Okay. So in orthodontic worlds, it's right next to the patient. So there is a difference on how they access and how they, how they display, if you will, that
Okay.
problem.
Okay. Which is going to come into play with the movement of the trunk, the shoulders, the
Yeah.
neck.
Yeah.
Okay.
The class fours and fives.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So if for them, when we lay out a space and we're working with our dealer partners and our
Hmm.
equipment specialists and we're teaming up on how are we going to lay this space out, it's very important, especially in the orthodontic world, to to make sure that we're placing that ortho pedestal in a very accessible, so we're not having to like reach forward and grabbing things. But when we're sitting chair side at the oral cavity, it's just really very easy to pull out a drawer and it's kind of right there
Yeah.
accessible. If that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about A-dec. What
Yes.
what makes A-dec's equipment and furniture kind of stand out in the ortho space? You've talked a little bit about there, but I wonder if you can go a little more in depth. And how does the company approach kind of the unique needs of the ortho team?
Yeah. So if you don't mind, I'd like to first start off by talking about our quality
Yeah.
because no matter what, it needs to last,
Hmm.
right? The product, and we believe like the quality of the product. A-dec's well known for quality in the market, and I say that with humbleness, but we do try to build a product that's going to last 20 plus years
Yeah.
for that
Okay.
office. And a lot of times I see product, I've been doing this for 20 years now, it's 30 years old. So
Mm,
quality first and foremost is crucial to what we do at A-dec. Second thing is it's got to have function. So that product, we don't just build something just to make it look pretty and neat and nice. Yes, that's also part of it, but we have to have function. Okay. So at the end of the day, if 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 it looks neat and nice and it if it doesn't support us chair side, it doesn't support us and have good function to be able to support us when we're working on the oral cavity, then I don't want to say so what, but it needs to have function, right?
yeah.
Um, some of the other things that I would say with A-dec, the not only just quality, the support, right? So when doctors buy and build a new office, let's say you're getting ready to build this new office, you've been working for a couple of years, you're ready to do your first practice. We're very much, and I think hopefully this kind of speaks to the equipment as well. It's not just we sell a product. Like I say this all the time. We're going to be a part of your practice. I'm going to come back even in 2 years. You want to do a new assessment and reassess on how we're working with the product. I'll come back 2 years, 5 years down the road. I'm going to be part of the practice for the rest of your career.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Some of the other things I would say that A-dec does, I feel a little differently is, again, we don't just sell the product and say good luck. We support it. We support it with superior customer service and tech support. And then we do things like ICV, which goes into our product chair side. What that product does, it actually cleans the lines. Okay. So suction lines, right? So they have to obviously have suction.
Yeah.
And that product's built into the actual ortho pedestal. So they don't have to go back to sterilization and grab a bucket and come out and clean. It's right at the chair side. They pop it on. They can clean it. They could even clean it in between patients if they had to, or if they wanted to. So there's other things that seeing my product at one of our display floors or at a show, it's easier to kind of talk to. Yeah. But we do several things to ultimately try to help the doctor and his or her team be more efficient and have better health and better posture.
Yeah. So, you mentioned orthodontists that are just kind of getting started. I know A-dec offers the Smart Start program. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is and how it helps those doctors who are opening their first practice?
Sure. So several years ago, we started this program called, like you mentioned, Smart Start program. What that entails is ultimately, and I would suggest, let's obviously connect and talk to myself about, there are certain qualifiers that are involved with this program. But ultimately the program is 25% discount for 2 years. Okay. And I think it's very crucial to kind of mention that, sometimes, these doctors are excited. They're getting ready to go start their first practice, maybe after being associate for a couple of years. They want to go do their first building in their first practice. Well, there's a lot involved in that, and a lot of expenditures. There's money that it takes to do that. Yeah. So what we do at A-dec is try to help with that and say, okay, for the first 2 years, so you don't have to go do it all up front, right?
Okay.
You got.
Good
There's
point.
quite a few things going on as far as costs involved in doing your first practice. So you have a 2-year window to be able to grow as you grow. So you don't have to go outfit all 10 operatories or 8 operatories or whatever it may be. Yeah. And you start off with the minimal qualifiers. And then you grow as your practice grows, and we grow with you, and we give that for the first 2 years. Then on top of that, Allison, there's another additional 2 years. So year 3 and 4, you actually have additional discounts. So it's called the clinic discount, and I won't explain all that, but I guess ultimately it's a 4-year discount program to help those doctors that start off their first practice to grow with them, and they have 4 years to take advantage of those discounts.
Okay.
And one other thing, we also partner with Hugh Freedy, so well known with this. If you're a Smart Start qualifying doctor, and we're very close with our Hugh Freedy reps, they would actually, connect with us. Hey, Dr. Allison is mentioned. She's a Smart Start program doctor. We approve that and, make sure that is the case. Not that anybody's trying to make sure that is the case. Right. And then Hugh Freedy actually offers deeper discounts with Smart Start qualifying doctors as well, that there's not offered anywhere else on the market. So they also play with that program, with that program as well. And then the last thing is Ascent Marketing, which is pretty well known in the industry. They have a program that also is paired with our Smart Start program, where it is only offered to Smart Start program doctors as well. So there's a kind of a bundle of some experts, if you will, that participate in that program.
Okay. Well, before we wrap up, the AAO annual session is coming up, and A-dec will be there. So what can attendees expect when they kind of stop by your booth?
Sure. Yes. So come by and check us out. We're booth space 3202. I will unfortunately not be there, but there will be some awesome A-dec TMs there to, show off the product and talk to any doctors that might have any questions. But they basically are going to have a pod, if you will, of a ortho designed ortho pedestal, one of our chairs, stools. They're also, and I didn't mention this, we also have mechanical equipment as well. So the
Like,
compressor that would
okay.
support the unit, chair
Okay.
side, right? And then the vacuum that's,
Mm,
going to get rid of fluids in the mouth,
right.
oral cavity. But yeah, they'll have that setup, a mock setup of what orthodontic operatory would look like.
Okay.
And they'd love to talk to you, love to show you it off, love to explain some of the things in greater detail that I kind of was, talking about that can actually show you some of the whys behind the product and how you truly can get better access to the oral cavity with what we've designed.
Great. Well, Jeromy, thanks so much for being here and for kind of shedding light on this aspect of the practice that I guess kind of gets overlooked until it starts causing problems. So thank you for this.
Yes. And like I said, I'm passionate about this.
Yeah.
Like I come in and I'll say, hey, we could change some lives. And I'm not just saying that. I truly mean that, I guess is
Yeah.
what I should say.
Yeah.
When we can show doctors with our product and how it can totally change the way they sit chairside, it's a game changer.
Yeah.
And I always say this, people who are in pain, and unfortunately, kind of like the statistics that I shared earlier,
Yeah.
there's a lot of the people that we talk to and work with that are in pain. If we can help them get out of that pain,
Yeah.
it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
love what we do. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you.
And I love, just being on this podcast. And if we can help out with anything, please get with your local A-dec TM. If you don't know who that is, you can always call our 800 number at 1-800-547-1883. They'll help you. Or you can go to www.adec.com and there's a link that you can put your zip code in and it'll tell you and give you information on who's your local TM, A-dec TM.
Great. As always, thank you for joining us. Be sure to subscribe to the Orthodontic Products Podcast to keep up with the latest episodes. And be sure to check out orthodonticproductsonline.com to keep up with the latest industry news. Until next time, take care.